Thank you, everyone. Yeah, I will add my acknowledgement to the First Nation people, the custodians, the traditional custodians of this land, and I think we have a lot to learn from them in terms of doing business, entrepreneurship in a sustainable way. How can we build an unsustainable society? Growing consumption per capita? Yeah, we're on track for that. Depleting natural resources? We're on track for that as well. Overusing stocks of fisheries and soils and lands, polluting water, air, we're on track for that as well. Increasing inequalities, creating hunger on one side and obesity on the other. Increasing the risk of pandemics. We're pretty on track for all of these things, right? However, today, we might be here with the goal to change these trends. Remember these trends because today we're here in this room where we're meant to be to tackle some of these issues. So that pink baby up there, I was surprised it was that pink. That's me. I was born in 1992, year of the first climate summit in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. Why I'm saying that is because I feel that a lot of the time the discussion about tackling social and ecological issues tend to talk about future generations, right? It's a way to postpone the problem. But I am, and probably most of us are here, the generation who already inherited a sick planet. We are that future generation. I could talk about the challenges that we are facing. This is like when in Zoom the connection doesn't work, just pretend we are online. So I could talk about the socio-ecological challenges in many different ways. I could tell you that we crossed 4 out of 9 planets' boundaries. I can tell you that our ecological footprint is very high and that every year we are reaching ecological capacity earlier and earlier in the year. I could remind you that the United Nations estimates that about 20 million people per year are displaced by natural disasters, and 85% of these people are from global south countries. But the reality is that you probably came across most of this and other data. And I'm aware that often the magnitude of these challenges is hard to grasp. It is established that wealthy countries and individuals are the major contributors to global greenhouse gases accumulation and resource depletion. As the UN Special Rapporteur on Poverty and Human Rights, Philip Halston, said in 2019, we risk a climate apartheid scenario, where the wealthy pay to escape overheating, hunger, and conflicts, where the rest of the world is left to suffer. Many reports and studies show that we're already seeing an inequitable implementation of climate-oriented infrastructures and policies. There is an increasing divide between those populations most negatively affected by climate change and those populations capable of insulating themselves from the negative consequences. The word apartheid is not evoked lightly. Study shows that, as other historical examples, apartheid is understood as an oppressive system that relies upon racist, colonial, and gender narrative of an institution to justify displacement, exploitation, segregation, and violence. This term of climate apartheid, I'm using it today to call on the attention of the uneven causes and impacts of the environmental crisis. Faced with all these challenges, in parallel to my studies, since the age of 13, I've been active with the goal to contribute to some positive change. I personally don't like the word activist, but I guess that people use these words because people who implement actions embrace their power and they know that they can change the system. To try and educate myself on the issues, I have studied, as you heard before early on in my biography, a Bachelor of Biology at the University of Geneva in Switzerland, where I'm from. But that wasn't enough. The natural science background wasn't enough to understand and tackle the deep environmental challenges. I wanted to gain some economics background to understand the problem from a different perspective. This led me in 2015 to come to Australia and start a master in environmental management with major in environmental economics at the University of Queensland. To be truly honest, since high school, I have never felt a scientist. But all my degrees are in science, including my high school one. And now I work for CSIRO, Australian National Science Agency. So I guess I will just embrace that I'm also a scientist. In my studies, I always wanted to build bridges in between disciplines. I wanted to nourish myself with different bodies of literature. The main reason pushing me to expand my disciplinary spectrum was that I have been focusing and advocating on many issues, and I wanted to understand their relationship. I've been fighting for the protection of the Amazon forest, against the mismanagement of plastic, for refugee rights, gender equality, but I arrived in a period of my life where I couldn't focus just on one issue. I couldn't prioritize one issue over another. Therefore, in my 20s, I had to step back to try and understand and study how all these issues were interlinked. I've started digging into the literature. I was trying to understand the upstream narrative, the root of the problem. I understood that climate change, biodiversity loss, increased inequalities are not the issue. They are the effect of the actual problem, which is our unsustainable economic system. The interlinked crisis is the result of an unfunctional system that is not prioritizing people and nature. The UN IPCC reports point out that we live in the Anthropocene, the epoch where human-induced activity led to environmental degradation that we are experiencing today. Recognizing this is already a big achievement, but it's not enough. Talking about the Anthropocene implies that all humans, here as today, as well as other Amazon indigenous tribes somewhere in South America, equally contribute to the social and environmental degradation of our world. But society is not composed of individuals that have equal impacts. Modern society is organized in a very specific socioeconomic framework. Our society aims at infinite growth on a finite planet. We live in a growth-driven economy that aims at infinite expansion, infinite production, infinite consumption. An economy that aims at growth as an end goal will continue to increase environmental liabilities and accelerate resource depletion. Some literature expand on the Anthropocene and says that we should refer to this epoch as the Capitalocene, the age of capital. Some others might refer to it as Necrocene, the age of death and extinction as a result of capital accumulation. In the Necrocene, life is turned into death, and death into capital. Since the Second World War, we also have the gross domestic product, a very used GDP index, that is used as a metric of welfare. We measure welfare in monetary terms as monetary transaction, and growth became a synonym of prosperity. This highly criticized indicator does not include social and ecological well-being. To increase GDP and profits, the current growth-driven economy continues to expand production and consumption. It doesn't produce goods to fulfill human needs. It produces goods that need to be sold. For example, have you ever wondered why plastic, that is one of the most durable material, is actually one of the most disposable one in our society? Have you ever heard about planned obsolescence? Companies, industrial designers design products with a shorter lifespan so that we are pushed to buy new ones to replace them. But these mechanisms, from this disposability of plastic to planned obsolescence, are destroying ecosystems and livelihood. As Raj Patel wrote, the perpetual quest of economic growth has turned humankind into an agent of extinction. The economic system continues to create social and ecological externalities. Cost shifted to future generations, other species, and the poorest in society. That's a heavy introduction for the morning, right? But in light of all this clear evidence of an unfunctioning system, which alternatives do we have? Well, luckily, in practice and in theory, there are alternatives that point out at better alternative socioeconomic systems. There is an emerging literature on degrowth, and degrowth is the concept that I have embraced and that I explore through my work as a researcher and through my praxis as a community entrepreneur. Degrowth is a multidimensional concept, and its practical implementation remains open to public debate. Nevertheless, degrowth is a new emerging socioeconomic paradigm, and studies show that it might be our only way to remain under 1.5 degrees. Degrowth is defined as an economy that can downscale economic production while building human flourishing beyond productivism and consumerism. Today, my first invite to you is to remember that we need to aim at social sustainability, to keep in mind that ecological sustainability must be a fundamental requirement, and the economy is anything that we design in this in order to achieve ecological and social prosperity. With this in mind, in 2017, I founded the Brisbane Tool Library, which is really like a book library, but instead of books, you can borrow hand and power tools, camping gear, kitchen appliances, and so on. I started the Brisbane Tool Library because I couldn't respond to the question, or where does change start? From a macro level, from top down, or should we start it as individuals? Well, I wanted to explore the meso level. I wanted to recreate the commons. The neoliberal system often tells us that the responsibility is on individuals, that we need to make our bread, cycle, make our soap, come and do an ethical job and go back. But what if the response relies in this meso level? So when I started the Brisbane Tool Library, I had no idea on how I would go about and do it. These are some of the donations in the first year. I had a car, which I acknowledge is a big privilege. And I started just with a basic social media page and a website. I started reaching out to people asking if they could donate things, stuff, anything from roller skater to food dehydrator to power tools. Over the years, we became more organized. And today, we still collect weekly power tools from various sources, and one is Brisbane City Council recovery centers. This is the pickup of one afternoon. This is waste. This is what waste looks like in our society. The tools, sometimes brand new, with the instruction. When we collect the tools from various sources or from curbside, etc., we then bring them to the tool library. And as we were expanding our inventory, we were expanding our team, more people were joining the movement. We then bring them at the tool library, and we have to clean and test and tag every item. We then catalog everything. So we take a picture, we try to find the name of the tools, and we put them online. And on our website, the inventory can be seen by anyone. And as you can see, we don't have just hand and power tools. We have Christmas decoration, bodyboards, camping gear, so many items to serve so many needs. This is the circular model that we've created. We rescue stuff from landfill, and tools go from users to users, so recreating that circular model within the community. And the items that we don't want or we don't need, we redirect them to other organizations that might need them more than us. Since 2018, we are based at the State Library of Queensland. We wanted to reclaim back the circular economy within libraries. We wanted to bring back these terms, because libraries have been a successful model across centuries, across cultures, across countries. And these are some of our members' borrowings, from kayaks to gardening tools. And I highlighted that picture down there where there's a kid because recently I was reflecting that there's so many kids that come weekly to the tool library with their parents. And I realized that we are normalizing borrowing rather than buying. And that might be a generational shift that we need in order to reduce consumption. And then we realized that people such as myself don't have any tool skills. I actually couldn't even name 5 tools when I started a tool library, not in English, not in any of the other language I speak. And so we realized that having an amazing inventory without having the skills to access and use these items was an issue. So we started organizing workshops from bike repairing to woodworking to a simple introduction to power tools. And that was a way to recreate community, but also to close the gap between, for example, women and men. I could brag about all the benefits that Tool Library brings, from reducing the environmental footprint, stimulating the reuse of tools. I could say that we potentially reduce inequalities, but because we offer the same access to everyone in society. For the price of one tool, people can borrow thousands of them, saving money and space at home. But most importantly, we created a movement across Australia. We had an echo from Darwin to Tasmania, from east to west. And it hasn't been always easy. You're all going to know, or you might know, that making business, creating businesses, entrepreneurs' lives are hard. And in addition to that, we have to build resilience to external factors. Down there, that's me in 2019 during the bushfire season. Up there, it's me in February this year when the tool library got impacted by the floods that interrupted our operation. And between these events, we had lockdowns, closing and reopening our operation all the time. So doing business is difficult, doing social business is more difficult, and doing it in these conditions is really challenging. However, we continue to build the commons. And the commons is not just about the things. The commons is about recreating a community that looks after and share the resources. We wanted to build a reevaluation of human relationship and resource use so that we could redesign society metabolism. In the commons, the important part is the commoning, is rebuilding the social networks around us to build resilient neighborhoods. Within a degrowth perspective, as Tool Library, we try to promote a need-oriented production, a need-based consumption, a change of values, and obviously we stimulate a high-quality use of goods. We think that we have to shift our economy from selling products to selling services to dematerialize the economy. In the first few years of the Brisbane Tool Library, I've been focusing on navigating bureaucracy, logistics, and all the basics. Whenever I participated to startup events, I felt that an outsider. We weren't bringing any new tech into the market. We weren't aiming at expanding and colonizing markets and countries. We were instead choosing to do every step in the most ethical way. Ethical choices range from putting in place democratic mechanisms inside the organization, but ethical choices included also choosing to have minimal printed marketing material. For example, the few printed items that we have, such as t-shirts, have been printed in-house from second-hand t-shirts. We chose reusable aprons during shifts instead of individual t-shirts. We carefully chose the digital platform to register our email and website, so to support other ethical businesses. While our ethics was strong, we were trying to develop the business. Our processes were slower than other startups. And we accepted that that was simply okay. Nevertheless, I continued to feel an outsider in the innovation space, an outsider in the innovation narrative. But just as we matured our organization in these 6 years, my praxis and thinking evolved, and I embraced the fact that, in fact, we are at the forefront of innovation. In fact, what is innovation? Innovation can be defined as new ideas, methods, and systems that create value. But another question that I would like you to keep in mind during the day and after today is, for who do we create that value? who would benefit from this innovation? We are too often led to think about innovation just in technological terms, in material terms. We are pushed to design the next gadget, hardware or software, and to create a market for it. But is it innovation a matter of selling the next new product, just often to increase profits? What if we expanded our understanding of innovation? What if we consider innovation in terms of new values, beliefs, and social structure? What if we included social innovation into the narrative? With social innovation, I don't simply mean the creation of new social enterprises, which are often businesses that simply greenwash or social wash society. For those who never came across the word greenwashing, this can be broadly defined as continuing business as usual while coating services and products with marketing campaigns about sustainability. Some might call them corporate environmental lies. It has been shown that greenwashing practices lessen the pressure to implement a more systematic, fundamental solution that requires more time, energy, and commitment to change. I know, by now your brain is probably saturated with concept. But if I'm sharing all of this, it's because I know that even if one word, one simple seed of this discourse will remain after my presence here, and you might choose to nourish it, it could become a forest. In poorer terms, just explore, understand, and remember that, again, infinite growth on a finite planet cannot and should not continue. On the solution side of history, I invite you to think about how we can create technology and knowledge not in terms of more, but in terms of better. I invite you to think today about social innovation in terms of systemic change. How can we redesign social structures, networks, and behavior so that we could build a more socially just and ecologically sustainable society? This is a difficult question. The most difficult question that we are asked to respond in this century. How can we redesign social structure, networks, and behavior so that we can build a more socially just and ecologically sustainable society? Know that you're not supposed to answer this question alone. This must become a collective reflection and collective action. Contrary to the neoliberal idea that you, as an individual, can save the world, contrary to the idea that you must create your own startup, grow it, and rapidly expand and colonize the world, today, I challenge you. I would like you to think that neither you nor your startup can change the world towards a sustainable future. Instead, we need to be brave enough to think in collective terms. All of you can be a pioneer, a leader, building collective action. And leadership is not just about fueling our egos or having nice social media profiles. Leadership should be about empowering others. And as Nobel Prize American novelist Toni Morrison expressed in '79 during her Barnard College announcement, if you are free, you need to free somebody else. If you have some power, then your job is to empower somebody else. We are here in the room today for those who can't be here. Leadership is about acknowledging our privilege and leveraging it to protect and liberate human and non-human from the dominant, damaging system. But leadership is also about being kind to yourself. In the mainstream business world, you will be pushed to become a unicorn, a highly profitable startup. I have experienced many startup events, competition, accelerators, and finding or building the unicorns remain the goal. The reality is that from Charles Darwin to Van Gogh to modern tech billionaires, beyond the high level of testosterone that these characters have, and the advantaged patriarchal environment in which they had or are operating, most of them came from privileged socioeconomic classes. Therefore, leadership is about understanding that we don't all start at the same beginning line, and that's okay. We can still have an impact. Leadership should be fueled with empathy for people around us as much as for ourselves. We need to refuse the idea of a unicorn and instead rethink that our business environment can be a thriving and collaborative one. And along the journey, look after yourself. I find this part the most challenging one, especially when we are moved by social and ecological purposes and responsibilities. In between my master, my PhD, and the management of the various projects, I struggle to take time to properly eat, rest, and exercise. At the point that once I had a muscular pain on my back, or I thought it was a muscular pain. I ended up discovering that I had a kidney infection, which led me to be hospitalized. In the scheme of things, that was just a little episode, but it was a big alarm that pushed me to reconsider my time management so that I could prioritize my well-being. By understanding the socio-ecological threats that our society is creating, we are led to have high level of work and activities, and trying to shift the system towards something better might take a toll on ourselves. But please, rest. And if, like me, you need to politicize everything, know that resting is the most revolutionary act that we can undertake. Resting is not only important for your physical and mental well-being. Resting also creates fertile ground for creativity, and we desperately need new imaginaries to improve society. As Trisha Hersey, founder of the NAP Ministry, expresses, rest is resistance. Our bodies are a true site of liberation for productivity-driven society, and she insists that our bodies are a site of liberation, and we need to reprogram, decolonize, and unravel ourselves from the wreckage of the growth-driven system. And if we take this discourse from a micro to a macro level again, we could open up the conversation about new values in society, that social innovation I was talking about. What if the prosperity of nation, instead of being measured on productivity, would be measured on how much free time we have? What if leisure time, free time, resting time would become a measure of national success? We need to aim at bigger goals. It's the hunger for bigger goals that led to social progresses. We have reduced working hours, improved working conditions, abolished some type of slavery, improved women's rights, attained some free education, because strong social movement had the dreams and bigger goals. Systemic change is a marathon. You won't come out today thinking that you did any systemic change, but perseverance must be our fuel. It's important that you follow your passion to develop your own project, but please, let's work together and create a momentum for social change. Gatherings such as this one today can be used for much more than distributing your business cards. They can be important social gatherings where ideas are challenged, conversation built, and collaboration explored. All together, we need to keep alive the imaginaries of a different society. This event is called Future Founder Festival, but if you're here today, you've already started your journey. You're already a founder of your own path to action. You might just need to shape how action will unfold. While you do your studies, you plan your projects, while you contribute to your community, push the boundaries. Pushing the boundaries is not simply about being and learning out of your comfort zone. It's about challenging the status quo, providing alternative ways of living. When you're pushing the boundaries, you're not only opening up opportunities for yourself, you're creating opportunities for others too. Finally, today, we're here in our home country, so-called Melbourne. And in a few weeks' time, month or years, you might be in another part of the world. But remember, the only good things about climate change and other socio-ecological challenges is that you can act from wherever you are in the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sabrina. That was amazing. I actually have a page full of notes over here, and some of the highlights that I had with the summaries before we move on to audience Q&A was, number one, you don't need to be great to start, but in order to be great, you do have to start, which I think was your first point, moving into the Brisbane Tool Library. The second one was, starting scrappy and cheap to validate the idea before scaling through a partnership with government, and also resilience to adversity. The provocation that you had to us was how can we redesign social structures, networks, behaviors to recreate a socially just society, ecological society? Did I get that correct? Sorry, I was writing so quickly.
That's okay.
And my most favorite bit is that resting is a revolutionary act. So if you're ever at work and need to take a nap, I think you just tell that to your boss and say, Sabrina told me to nap. So that was really great. We do have some questions on the Slido, but I know some people had a bit of difficulty accessing it. Was there any reflections or questions that I could just take on the audience? We've got a roving mic on that side.
Yes.
Yep, gentleman in the green. You can start with your name and also your question for Sabrina.
Cool. My name's Alden. I just first wanted to say that was really inspiring. It really resonated, and I think it's really important what you're doing and what you're communicating with us. My question is, while you were going through the startup phase, and I know you said you had difficulty taking care of yourself during that as well, but how do you pay the bills and also found a organization that is socially based, that perhaps doesn't have the same kind of unicorn level as other startups?
Sure, thank you for that. Yeah, that is the most difficult question, and to respond to, because obviously as we want to shift the system towards something else, as we want to bring that radical innovation, we still live within the constraints of the system. I see also a lot in academia a shift to push you to become an entrepreneur and start your venture. Well, as I've done it, is you don't have to choose one or the other. I always wanted to privilege both sides of my life, so I never left my studies while I was doing all of this. And I know that we have, stress and time management, different skills, but for me it was important to continue having, a degree, to continue. I was doing a PhD at that time, which wasn't paid very much in Australia, but enough to survive, and at the same time building the Tool Library. So I should admit that Tool Library is a not-for-profit organization run by many volunteers. The financial sustainability of it can be improved, but the problem in Australia for social enterprises, especially if you need a physical space, so not if you're a digital startup, is that, there's like a housing crisis, rent crisis, even if you fundraise or you have a strong revenue model, often it just needs to go into rent. So what I've learned is that we have this tendency to think about monetary wealth or investment in your organization, but I shifted the conversation saying, instead of asking money for rent, what if I ask a space directly? Instead of asking money to buy a vehicle, what if I ask a vehicle directly? And sometimes you might see that organization, government, council are actually more open to give you exactly what you need rather than give you the funding for it. So that's another way of thinking about asking directly what you need instead of the fundings then to buy it. I hope that responded.
Thank you for the question. Was there any other reflections, insights? Yes. In the middle here. And we'll go to the back afterwards.
Okay, so hello, Sabrina. Yeah. So I just found it very, I was really inspired and impressed by the Brisbane Tool Library. And do you think this kind of system will be popularized in the nearly future? I mean, your mode of the Brisbane Tool Library.
Yes. Yes, so since we started, there have been so many other tool libraries across the countries. So I'm sure that if you do a quick online search, you will see that different communities, the Gold Coast, Sydney, Brunswick here had a similar project as well. So they're popping out around the countries. We're faced with similar challenges, for example, finding a physical space to operate with. But that's when I started Brisbane Tool Library, everyone goes, why did you call it Brisbane? How will you scale up? Where are you going to be in 5 years' time, etc.? But I called it Brisbane because for me, it was important to have just a sustainable local organization, but the model could be replicated and community can take ownership of it wherever they want. And we can exchange at that level so that we are indeed, we're not franchising, but we're building a movement.
Great. There was a question at the back, and then we'll come back to the front.
Hey, hi Sabrina. My name is Abhi. First of all, your story was really inspiring. My question is kind of related to what the other gentleman asked over there. So while it's brilliant to build this kind of a model, what are your thoughts about building an online model which can be used globally rather than being localized to Brisbane, etc.? And how do you see yourself probably capturing the global space for sustainability? Because all the things that you're doing is really brilliant. I myself am into some seed paper thing, and I'm just trying to see how I can scale that up. So I can clearly relate to what you're doing.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts about probably next 5-10 years going global with your idea and all? And how do you plan for that? Point number one. Second point is, just curious to know how big is your team? I understand that it started by you, but do you have a team of, let's say, thinkers who actually help you put a plan in place, etc.?
Yeah.
Just interested in knowing that.
Okay,
Thank you.
so first of all, I always, I got this question in the past as well, and I always say, you can order your pizza and your date online, but for your tools, you walk. So I feel there is this emphasis of bringing everything digital, and I can see and understand the advantages of that, and people can pre-book online, etc. But for us, it was important to rebuild that community, to rebuild, because when people come and borrow tools or other stuff, they're not just having that transactional action with us. They're bringing in stories. We're building a community around that, that our members become our friends. Our members become people we celebrate our birthday with. So the digital space doesn't include that human relationship that we are losing, right? And we can see now that you can buy or connect with everyone online, but we are really at the detrimental effects of human relationship. In terms of scaling up, that is a choice. There are actually other tool libraries that started in Europe, in the US. They had other tool libraries as well. So the movement itself is scaling up. It doesn't mean that because we don't scale up, This idea of having infinite, the corporation dream is something we refuse. We have at the moment, across all the years, we had more than 150, 200 volunteers. Weekly, probably 20 to 50 volunteers, which is really a full-time, job. And we used to be open 4 times a week, but with the floods, that's changed a little bit. So I think it's a choice, because in order for you to scale up at a global level, there are social and environmental costs in there. And we don't want, we want people across the countries to take ownership of the model, to merge it with their cultures and their need and make it their own. So even if the model, the Brisbane Tool Library is not operating elsewhere, our eco and the eco of other social movement is propagating internationally. So there is a shift away and an acknowledgement that, infinite production and consumption should be rethought.
Thank you for the question. We'll finish. Did you still have a question up the front? Did you?
That's true.
Yes? No?
Yes.
Yep. All right. This will be the last one for the audience, and then we'll go to the Slido.
Hi, Sabrina. My name's Sunny. Thanks for the speech. I quite liked it. My question, I guess, would be when you say you want to grow ethically and slowly, I think you kind of answered my question in saying you don't kind of want to grow globally, but I feel like if you want to make a really big impact, sometimes you do have to be pretty big before you can make your voice kind of heard. So what do you think about that?
So I should say that I don't have an answer, a proper answer to everything, but these are obviously thoughts that I have regularly with everyone. So I should clarify that the purpose is not to grow slowly. It's just that when you do ethical choices, that goes slower, right? We could order marketing materials from overseas, get it quickly, expand, get, exploit labor in other countries to do the, the website for us or other things, but that's not how we want to do it. But I think we have to really to decouple or disconnect this idea that the size of your company, can have an impact. And I actually personally think corporations should not even exist, because when you become too big, you're, exploiting workers and the environment. So I think we have to rethink the sizes of business. What's a business that provides an impact in services and goods, at the same time looks after the well-being of the employees, the well-being of the community. So I think this is a probably important conversation to have here in the room. Do we want to follow that model? And that's okay if they want to, but is there any other way to do it? And pre-capitalism, people have had technological invention and everything, and they didn't have big corporations. So yeah, we just have to think, and that's probably why we're also here today. How can we do business better, and how can we do it together, and how we can do it in respect of social values and ecological values as well.
Thanks so much, Sabrina. We do have a lot of questions in the Slido, which I'm going to summarize into a theme of questions, which is around people wanting to make a change, not knowing how to start, feeling a bit overwhelmed on where do they start. So if you were to give someone advice like I asked you, what would you start with if you were going all over again and you saw a big challenge that you wanted to solve?
So I would recommend, if you're still studying, etc., to remain on that path. Because although, there is this tendency to go and be a cool entrepreneur and have all these, people coming and inviting you to speak, but really studying whatever the field you're in, and it can be formal study through institution or informal, it really gives that long-term thing. So I almost say that to be successful in entrepreneurship, you should keep, a foot into education so that you develop that long-term thinking that is not, market-driven all the time.
Great. Thanks, Sabrina. Can I get another warm round of applause for Sabrina Chakori?
Thank you.